You wake up in the morning, stretch, and then decide to make a cup of coffee before checking your phone. It is a simple, unremarkable routine. And as you go through the motions, you experience the profound subjective feeling that you are the true author of those actions, deliberately steering your own life. Here is a timeline of how a choice actually happens inside your brain. In the 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet tracked the brain activity of volunteers who were asked to flex their wrists whenever they felt the urge. He found that the brain's motor cortex begins building an electrical charge, the readiness potential, approximately 550 milliseconds before the wrist actually moves. But the subject only reports being aware of the intention to move about 200 milliseconds before the action. The brain prepares the action a full third of a second before the person even knows they've made a choice. Later studies using functional MRI have stretched that window further. By monitoring activity in the prefrontal and parietal cortex, researchers can predict which button a participant will press up to 10 seconds before the conscious mind registers the decision. To understand why this happens, consider the sheer volume of data moving through your skull. Neuroscientists estimate the brain processes roughly 11 million bits of information every second. Conscious awareness, however, handles only about 50 bits. Most of our mental processing must occur automatically, below the threshold of awareness. This is the realm of Daniel Kahneman's System 1, a fast, unconscious processor that handles roughly 95% of our daily choices, while we're busy focusing on other things. In this exact model, consciousness merely functions as a recorder of events that have already transpired in the neural machinery. The brain reaches a conclusion and the mind is briefed on the outcome. Consider how this looks in a high-stakes environment. You arrive at work and face a complex strategic decision. The classical assumption is that a good choice requires pure reason, a deliberate effort to suppress emotion and analyze the facts. Neurologist Antonio Damasio found that this pure reason is actually a recipe for paralysis. He studied a patient named Elliot, who had lost the connection between his emotional centers and his decision-making faculties. Elliot's IQ and logic were perfect, but without emotional signals to guide him, he could spend hours debating which pen to use or where to have lunch. Every option felt equally valid. Emotions act as pre-filters, narrowing the field of options before logical analysis begins. But because these emotional shortcuts are fast and automatic, they produce consistent biases. The availability heuristic, for example, causes us to judge the probability of an event based entirely on how easily we can recall a specific example. After 2001, media coverage of terrorism was visceral and constant. As a result, Americans perceive terrorism as a ubiquitous threat, while the statistical reality of fatal traffic accidents, which took far more lives that same year, remained largely invisible to the public's risk assessment. The vividness of the imagery overrode the actual data. These biological biases are evolutionary filters. They dictate what you fear and what you value long before your conscious logic gets a chance to weigh in. Outside the skull, your physical environment exerts a similar pressure. This is choice architecture. The way the layout of a room or the structure of a form influences the outcome of a decision. For example, look at retirement savings participation. In opt-in systems, where employees must actively check a box to participate, enrollment averages around 35%. But in systems where the default is enrollment and the employee must check a box to leave, participation reaches 90%. The financial incentives are identical, but the default option exerts a massive pull on behavior. The same principle applies to a cafeteria. Placing fruit at eye level and moving desserts to a hard-to-reach corner changes what people eat without the need for new rules or price changes. The environment simply edits the choices on the user's behalf. We are also mirrored by the people around us. In the 1950s, Solomon Asch showed participants a simple visual test. When surrounded by actors who purposefully gave the wrong answer, 75% of the real subjects ignored the evidence of their own eyes and agreed with the incorrect majority at least once. Whether it's the layout of a grocery store or the pressure of a social group, our environment is constantly co-authoring our choices. There is no such thing as a neutral presentation. These environmental nudges become even more precise when they move onto your phone. On social media, the attention economy uses these psychological vulnerabilities to keep you engaged. Recommendation algorithms ingest billions of data points to map your specific System 1 triggers. The system identifies what creates outrage, what time of day you are most susceptible to impulse, and what emotional state makes you most likely to stay on the app. It then constructs a feed tailored to maximize your time spent. Interface designers utilize dark patterns to facilitate this. The pull to refresh notion on your timeline was modeled on the lever of a casino slot machine, specifically designed to trigger a dopaminergic reward cycle each time you check for new content. These digital ecosystems create filter bubbles where your beliefs determine what you see, and what you see reinforces your beliefs. It is a feedback loop that often narrows your perception of reality without your knowledge. If your biology, your environment, and your technology are all working to shape your decisions before you're even aware of them, is human agency just an illusion? Not entirely. You cannot turn off your automatic processing, but you can build the capacity for metacognition, the practice of thinking about your own thinking. By creating a deliberate pause before a high-stakes choice to ask what is driving your impulse, you allow your conscious mind to review the work of the unconscious. You can also design your own environment. Commitment devices, like setting up an automatic savings transfer or leaving your phone in another room, introduce friction that blocks bad habits. You are using the power of defaults to make the behavior you actually want the easiest choice. Finally, you can cultivate a scout mindset. Rather than a soldier who reflexively defends a position, a scout's only goal is to map the terrain as accurately as possible, following evidence even when it challenges their pre-existing beliefs. Freedom is not the absence of influence. True freedom is the capacity to recognize what is steering you and choosing to hit pause. The examine choice is the only one that is truly yours.